This is a 4-part video series that offers a general guide for writing a successful grant application and hopefully provides your organization with the tools to be more equipped for applying for and receiving future grant opportunities. In this video, we cover how to leverage data, which is part 2 of the 4-part series.
Data is key to telling the story, and it is important to illustrate your passion and amplify your justification through the appropriate utilization of data. This will support rationale for why your program or service is needed and what the potential impact can be. We recognize this can be challenging, but it is important to utilize data during the granting process when planning a program or service and applying to grants, as well as having an evaluation plan to monitor the program or service. We have previously shown how justifying the need in your application is important, but one of the greatest assets to justifying your need is through the utilization of data. When you are justifying the need and using your agency's understanding of the problem, you need to also look to the data to set the stage and build your case in your application. When appropriate, use data at different levels to begin to tell the story. Looking larger scale, at provincial or even national data to begin to identify the problem, then moving into local data to identify the needs of your community. Local data may not always be available, as there could be limitations. This does not mean you ignore the data or do not incorporate data. It is all part of the story, and it is important to present the available data in a way that is valid and identifies the limitations. Then you can move into the current gap that you are highlighting in your application and how your work addresses this. You will want to include how your current and/or proposed work adds to the understanding of your community's need. Once you have your justification of need, we can move into why your agency is appropriate and ready to deliver this service or program. You can again utilize internal data and present evidence of your ability to reach the target population, previous programs or services you have provided, and why your organization is able to impact the current problem your community is facing. Funders often ask about collaborations and how you plan to utilize partnerships. What partnerships do you have that are well established? What work have you supported in the past? How are you going to leverage these partnerships to have a successful program or service? These are all questions you should be prepared to answer. Additionally, include data in literature that supports your program or service. This could focus on evidence-based practices that are well established and needed in community, or promising practices that aim to fill a current gap. This strengthens your application and prepares you to go out and impact your community and measure and monitor the impact you are having. Data is everywhere. This can be overwhelming when you do not know where to look. Each sector will have different needs, but I have highlighted here a few examples where you can get a variety of data from different geographies. You can access data sets and analyze variables that align with your work. My example here is census data available on Statistics Canada, which has federal, provincial, and regional level data you can utilize. There are also publicly available dashboards that summarize and visualize data for you and often have different filters or slicers you can customize your visualization. These tools may not always be user-friendly, so it is important to access the user guides and data notes. I have the Public Health Ontario snapshots here, where you can select an area of interest and investigate different indicators at both the provincial and regional level. Finally, I have listed here reports where data is summarized, visualized, and interpreted. This can be helpful when looking and writing the narrative when building your application. The datasets feed into dashboards and reports, so it is great to leverage the work that has already been done to collect and summarize these data. The NRPS annual reports linked here as an example, again, looking at local context and data to inform community need if appropriate for your application. These are just some examples of publicly available data, but it is important to talk to people in your sector and collaborators on where there are publicly available resources that align with your work. Another tip is looking at data rates. Rates take into consideration the population size, which can be different across geography and across time. Using rates normalizes the data. It is also important to appropriately cite your data. Look to grant guidelines for this. Again, recognizing that resources are limited, it is still important to scope out your project and have an evaluation plan in place prior to initiating the program or service. The plan needs to be more than hiring a third-party consultant to execute evaluation. There should be planning on the organization side to show that you are accountable and going to be monitoring the program or service so you can continuously improve. I also want to highlight outcomes versus outputs. We will be measuring outputs of the program such as number of sessions ran, number of clients served, budget, etc. We also want to be highlighting the impact, and that is in the outcome measures. Again, this is not always easy, but it is important. Some programs or services have long-term outcomes and population-level outcomes. Having a data-driven approach does not mean you cannot be creative. You can use both quantitative counts or calculations and qualitative descriptive characteristics to evaluate your program or service. A final piece I want to highlight is data literacy. This is the ability to read, understand, collect, synthesize, and communicate data. Organizations have staff with varying skill sets, and everyone has a different comfort level with data. It is important to empower staff to understand data and be good data stewards because it directly feeds back into the work they do. I have linked a free resource from Statistics Canada for data literacy training as an introduction. We are always trying to build capacity among staff and empower organizations to be able to utilize data. This concludes part 2 of the series. The next section will cover common errors and grant tips. If you need this information in another format, please call the Niagara region at 905-980-6000. For more information, please visit niagararegion.ca.